We got good stuff tonight. So, hi everybody. My name is Jeff Kamen. Welcome to Books and Bars. If you're here for the first time, hopefully you can see to turn on the chat down below, and we will have some things that are addressed in the chat, and then more often than not, the idea is for you to raise your hand, and you use that participant button, and you can raise a little digital virtual hand, and I will call on you, and then we unmute you, or ask you to unmute yourself, and then ask a question or make your comment about tonight's book. So I want to give everyone a chance to speak, especially if you read the book and have something to say. So don't be afraid to raise your virtual hand and join our conversation. If you're not comfortable doing that, though, you can always just use the chat and type in questions, and my co-host Rebecca will help me address some of what's going on in the chat and bring it to the larger group here too. So before we kick off tonight's discussion, hopefully you all know that it is part of a really important program that Beth Burns from the Friends of the St. Paul Library is here to tell us a little bit more about. So Beth, are you ready to go?
I am ready. I even took myself off mute.
Excellent.
12 months in, I'm finally like figuring out the rhythm of all of this. Hi, everybody. I have seen, there are familiar faces on this screen that I have seen at the three-dimensional version of Books and Bars. My name is Beth Burns. I am president of the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library, and we love being supportive of Books and Bars all the time. But this month, and when we bring the Read Brave book forward each year, it's really particularly exciting because it becomes the intersection of two programs that are really important to us, that we value highly, that we're proud to be affiliated with. And so super excited that you guys are literally kicking off this year's Read Brave St. Paul program. I am not going to be the one that takes a ton of time to tell you what Read Brave is, because my colleague from the library itself, Marika Stalak, is here. And Marika has run this program now for many, many years. But I really appreciate that this is the group that will be sort of triggering the conversations that will now go on for months and months. I think of all the years of Read Brave, a community-wide book club designed to sort of bring us all together around tough conversations, intergenerational conversations on tough topics. This year feels really prescient, really important, and necessary. The woman who's saying January was a really hard month. It's like December 102nd, 2020. It feels like it just keeps going. And so grateful to be in community with you this evening. Grateful that literature is a tool to help us understand the world in new and better ways. And really, really grateful that the St. Paul Public Library hasn't sort of gone into a cocoon during the last year, but has leaned into what does it mean to be a center for social infrastructure. It may look different, but the library has shown up over the past year in the most extraordinary ways, which makes us even more proud as the Friends to do everything we can to support their work and to support the individuals who do the work. And with that, I want to really just pay credit to and have the privilege of introducing Marika, who is the brainchild behind Read Brave and whose passion for the program has really brought it to where it is today. So Marika, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you for having me at Books and Bars. I'm thrilled to be here. And I just wanted to say a few words about Read Brave in case you're not familiar. So like Beth said, that Read Brave is in its 7th year, and we are using the power of stories to build awareness and empathy on themes that are relevant to St. Paul and our communities. So Read Brave it connects readers of all ages to one another through 5 books. So we've got the main book that you all read, and then we have 3 kids' books of different ages, and then a nonfiction title as well. So people can come from any way that they feel most comfortable, and they can have a conversation with each other. So parents can talk to their kids. We want seniors involved. We want to have some intergenerational dialogue. We also engage the authors. We have programs and activities, and then calls to action. So asking people to act on whatever it is that we are focusing. So this year's theme is Owning Our Stories, Rising Together for a Better St. Paul. So we're centering conversations this year around self-worth and racial healing, reconciliation, liberation, and accountability, especially as white people. That's one that I'm focusing on. As they relate to the characters and the authors in our Read Brave programs, we intentionally chose all BIPOC authors and characters for our 5 titles, and are really trying to center conversations around how we can rise together to be a better St. Paul. So our 5 books this year, you read Stars in the Blackness Between Them by Junauda Petrus. She is our first Read Brave author that is local. We're thrilled about that, especially with how much is happening in the Twin Cities around the murder of George Floyd, and now the trials coming up. We think it's really important to start having some conversations that really can be centered on what's happening locally. And then the nonfiction book is Children of the Land, which is a memoir by Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. I won't go into detail about all these books, but it's an excellent novel written by an undocumented, or he was undocumented as he was growing up, and it's his memoir of his experiences and the experiences of his parents. The picture book is We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom, and that book, illustrated by Michaela Goad, who they just won the Caldecott, so we're thrilled about that. Our early chapter book is a book called Astrid and Apollo and the Starry Campout. It's by V.T. Bedanya, who is also a local author, and it is a story with Hmong characters, and Vong has been really great at talking to a lot of us about what it means to start seeing actual Hmong characters in books, and how she did not have that when she was growing up, because she, anyway, I'll let her tell her story. And then middle grade fiction book is Front Desk by Kelly Yang. So if you have, if you're interested in reading more of those books, those are all available ebooks through the library, and also extra copies to check out in print copies. And also we'll be giving away several copies, or several thousand copies of these throughout St. Paul, through schools and book clubs and that kind of thing. So we will be trying to distribute those and get them in the hands of people. And so we will be starting, Read Brave actually officially launches this year a little bit later than usual. So we're officially launching on March 1st. So like Beth said, this is the early kind of sneak peek into Read Brave, and then it will be culminating around April 24th. So if you're interested in seeing programs with Junauda, that is a great way to connect and to learn more. You can register for our mailing list and learn way more at readbrave.org. It's also, that's also links right to our website at supl.org. So find out more information there. And I'm happy, I will stick around and answer any questions in the chat if you have any.
Thank you, Marika, and thank you, Beth. You will both be happy to know, if you didn't already, that we now video and archive all of these Books and Bars chats. So I will put up an edited version of this on YouTube that then, if you want to share with anyone else as you get closer to the actual launch or use it for other materials, feel free to do so. But thank you so much. And yes, stick around if you can for the chat. And we're happy to have you, and so happy to be a part of Read Brave and to continue our ongoing partnership with the Friends of the St. Paul Library. So I am really excited that I'm also I'm a book awards judge. So I'm reading some fun stuff right now, but I can't tell you what they are, of course, because that's part of my job as a judge. It's a total secret, but I can tell you I'm a judge, right?
What
I can at least say that. It's kind of exciting.
I have to ask, what category?
I went for genre fiction this time.
Ooh,
I was either going to go for genre fiction or the overall, like the sort of the main category, but I think I'm glad I went with genre fiction this time.
Okay, I just have to then put in a plug. You brought it up. It's not my fault. April 29th is the free virtual Minnesota Book Awards ceremony this year. So we will lift up the best books of 2020 by Minnesota authors. It's a super fun, well-produced program. It's a great celebration of Minnesota writers. So if you are getting used to doing this sort of virtual thing, I really, really encourage you to join us on April 29th for the Minnesota Book Awards ceremony. We don't have a link, we don't have it all set up yet, but it'll be great. Okay, I'm done
Looking
now.
forward to it. Yeah, we
Yes.
will. I'm sure we'll be talking much more about that in the weeks to come. But yeah, I'm excited, and I will be on board for that too. So so welcome again, everybody. Thanks for being here. I see we're having a robust chat going on already. I am looking for anyone who, after I tell you a little bit about Junauda Petrus, wants to be our first person to raise their virtual hand and tell us what they thought of the book. Or maybe it's somebody who just finished it, fairly recently, so they have a really fresh take on it. So get ready to raise that virtual hand. So about our author, she's a writer, pleasure activist, filmmaker, and performance artist born on Dakota land of Black Caribbean descent. Her work centers around wildness, queerness, futurism, ancestral healing, sweetness, shimmer, and liberation. She lives in Minneapolis with her wife and family. And I believe, did I put her age in here? I think she's 39. We just like to be like, you know what? This person wrote a really good book by the time they're 39. Have you done that yet? I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe. I hope so. I hope someday we're reading all of your books. So anyone ready to kick it off? Be the first person. Otherwise, I will just keep asking questions until we have someone else with their hand up. And like I said, Rebecca is our co-host tonight. She's helping monitor the chat. And so she can jump in at any time also because she can't actually raise her hand. So if you hear someone else jumping in, that's Rebecca. I see Dr. Todd Cook with his hand up. Dr. Todd Cook, could I unmute you? Talk to us.
Yeah, and first of all, it's fun to be here. I'm in San Diego, so I got
Welcome.
insight to your Minnesota party and had a whole lot of fun actually reading the book. I thought the book was rough to get into, and I think that was more me than the book, getting used to language and context that was different than from my own. Then it was really good, and then the ending sucked. Like I think a few people have commented on. It didn't do it for me. I got to the ending and I was just like majorly disappointed. I felt like the whole book was giving a sense of presence and giving a sense of authority for individuals of whatever identity to be seen and felt and heard, and then at the end you disappear, and it's like, no. I think it would have been more meaningful to me had she died in the quiet arms of her lover, and would have been great, but I'm just a reader.
No, we're all just readers here, and everyone's opinion and perspective counts and matters. So thank you for being here from San Diego and for being a first timer. Appreciate it. I think we'll really get into that ending and talk about that because I actually liked it, but maybe that we have different ways of interpreting what actually happened at the ending. I don't know if we want to totally go there yet. I see Evelyn and Kara have their hands up too. So let me go to a couple other hands here, and we'll maybe hold before we get to the diving into that ending for just a little bit, but we won't forget to talk about it. But thank you, Todd. And if you have another question, feel free to raise your hand again and join the discussion. Thanks. Evelyn, talk to us.
Hi, everyone. I think I want to do what Kara suggested and start with my star sign, sun sign. I'm a Gemini.
Excellent.
And I really like the book overall. I love that first scene, like Audra, like following her grandmother through the woods. Like I really connected with that, just like from childhood, and like how much I admired my own grandmother. And so that interaction, oftentimes outside of the magical realism aspect, of course, was definitely something I could relate to. My grandmother also was like a big believer in dreams and, you know, herbs and that kind of thing. So that was good. I really liked that. I liked that it was set in Minneapolis, and I could like envision sort of their neighborhood, you know, the sort of houses they had, the Black Eden, all of that. Like I was like, yep, I know what that is. The only thing I had a problem with was like, they were like, we went to the lake, and I can't really figure out which lake they went to. I don't know if I should take that literally or not, but yeah. And then as the book went on, I won't get into the ending too much, but I was really nervous that it would end up like into like a Fault in Our Stars kind of situation. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be one of those. And like, that's been done kind of, not that there's anything wrong with it. And of course, this is a different perspective. You don't really see a lot of, queer Black people, young people in that space, right? Of like, and which brings me to like the fact that maybe I couldn't really relate very much. I felt like I was looking through more of a window than a mirror for much of the book. But I learned a lot and I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Evelyn. Well, thank you for pointing out Kara's idea. I think that's great. I'm Aquarius, and so we're in the dawning of the age of Aquarius right now. Yes, I did just have a birthday. Also, Books and Bars is Aquarius. Books and Bars is celebrating 17 years this month. So thank you all for being here for that. So yes, I like that I share a birth month and sign with my online book club. It's great. As far as what lake it was, I thought about that, and I thought at some point, hopefully you were never tricked into purifying yourselves in the water of Lake Minnetonka, and then later find out that wasn't Lake Minnetonka. I'm not sure. It could have been a couple different options. That's a great thing about it here. There's a few different lakes right here in the city that it could have been without specifically being said. If anyone else knows for certain and wants to say, that'd be great. But I will go to Kara now, whose hand is up. Kara, talk to us.
I'm a Leo, and I really enjoyed this book. I think like just emotionally, it really resonated with me. I feel like if I like had a book like this as like a young queer person, it would have been like pretty important to me growing up. I mean, as it is now, it's like a great book, but I feel like it would have been like identity for me, not just because it took place in Minnesota as well, but I do think it being in Minnesota added to my love of it, but I wish there was more references. I loved West Bank. I loved Minnehaha Falls. I thought it was very funny that they were able to go to Minnehaha Falls and there were no people around. I would love the tips on when I can do that because it sounds great.
Probably this week. Probably this week is a good time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It has to be like below, like 25 below zero is when I go. But yeah, I would have loved more even of Minneapolis. Sometimes it did just feel like it could be taking place anywhere. So, but I mean, I imagine like that's true of other books in other cities. Like, I really loved, I loved like the letters that Mabel and Afua were exchanging. And I feel like now I kind of want to get into the ending a bit, but I will say I like enjoyed the ending a lot. And I don't know if anyone else kind of predicted it, but in one of like Afua's letters, he talks about how there was like another inmate on death row who like disappeared in the same way, like he ascended, right? Like it's, I don't know, like Nirvana or something. Like I didn't view it as them like disappearing and being erased or whatever. Like I was it was like disappearing in terms of like enlightenment and like spiritual stuff. So when I read that in the letter, I was like, please let this be what happens to Mabel. I like don't want to see like this young girl like die. So for me, it was really good. And I mean, I can see like, you know, it's magical realism. And I know that like people have different reactions to that. But like, for me, it was really nice that like a book that I was really worried about being bleak was not bleak at all. And I think it's like great for, you know, young people to have a beautiful novel like this that's not just like utterly depressing, because like an innocent man being put to death and a teenager dying are like super depressing subjects. So the fact that they were able to like talk about these issues and have like emotion with them, but then not have it be soul crushing, I liked about it. But I'm also a person who does not like to have my soul crushed.
Well, I know, and oftentimes we do tend to read darker, soul-crushing things here, and so when we finally read something that isn't such, I mean, I knew this was going to be a bit sad, and your mileage may vary on how much it pulled at your heartstrings, but I see Donna's hand is up, and if we don't have another hand for that, then we'll just dive into that ending since it keeps coming back up. So, Donna, talk to us.
Oh, okay. I, like Kara, thought the love story was very sweet and very tender, and I was pleased in a YA novel that there would be an opportunity.
Donna, we're losing your audio. Donna?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was really sweet, the love story. I'm pleased that a YA novel has a way for young teens to see in themselves and in a novel something that's affirming like that. And I thought that was handled very beautifully. Actually, my favorite part was all of the tuning into nature. I think both in Trinidad and then even also in Mabel's family with their Black Eden, there was this whole current of all of this appreciation for how powerful nature and earth and the soil and plants and all that can be. And I had just finished reading The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. And in her novel, there are Native Americans on a reservation in North Dakota with characters that have sort of that same sense of fundamental appreciation of the lore of their ancestors and how powerful it is to believe in a spiritual world that's part of our world and nature. And I thought that was beautifully written. But I am eager to hear what you think about the ending, because the one part that didn't work so much for me either, though, was all of those dream sequences, where we got a lot of the background about Queenie through Mabel's dreams. Anyway, that was all a little bit strange for me, but we can talk about the ending because.
Okay. So here's I'll start with my take on it, and then I would love to hear anyone else's. And Rebecca, if we've already seen them in the chat, feel free to jump in and tell us what's been in there. But I guess, okay, so magical realism. Magical realism, I think there's a scale that it can be on, or a spectrum, if you will. And I think there are times where magical realism might be much less realistic and much more magical. And I guess I read because not feeling that this was maybe on the level of the magical realism in other things that we've, like, from the start, it feels like it comes on a little bit later, and maybe it's more of like a folk tale sort of thing, and it's hinted at. But I guess I didn't really take it so literally, the ending being that there was an actual ascension necessarily. I guess I sort of took it as maybe it was like their spirit or their soul, or, in essence, they did that. Like they were lifted away and they were uplifted, but it wasn't as though, I guess I didn't take it that way. Now, you can tell me and maybe point to something in the text that clearly states, and then the car was empty, and, like the Ferris wheel, it came down and it was empty or something like that. I don't think that it is stated like that, though. I feel like it's really sort of up to your interpretation of what the ending is, and maybe how you interpreted that ending is whether you liked it or not. Thoughts? Anyone else on their take on the ending and how it affected them?
Hey, Jeff, this is Rebecca. I'm
Yes.
gonna jump right in. I don't see any hands up, so I'm not taking anybody's place at the moment. I'm an Aries, by the way. And I love the book. I love the book because it was like eating luscious food and listening to luscious music and people's voices and seeing through other people's eyes. And it was not centered around whiteness. It was not centered around American world to the exclusion of all others. It was intersectional. It was not overtly sexy, but it was very sensuous. It was it was so many things. And yes, I agree that there's things that you could quibble about, you know, if you're searching for a strong narrative or for it to make sense, it's not going to be your cup of tea. But I felt like I was like being moved in, I don't know, I was moved into another place, and that was a good thing. And so I looked at the characters and tried very hard to identify as much as I could and be there for them. And after a while, it was effortless, and it was I was just there with it. The ending, I think perhaps felt a little rushed because we were just getting to the good part. We were really happy to see Afua and all of the characters, but what's her name? Anyway, get together and have that connection and perhaps some justice and some, you know, and so it was hard. But I think that's also the very reason why she had to stop it there, because I think anything after that would have been anticlimactic. And I think she took the license that she was due by writing a novel with magic realism. And I agree that it did not wrap everything up. I don't see a sequel to this, as so many novels signal that they're going to have, you know, these characters resurrected for our continued, you know, I don't know, joy. I do hope that some of the characters end up in other things. Queenie was my favorite, and that's why I did not mind those dream sequences, because I wanted to learn more and more and more about Queenie, and I think that the ability to take an audience to places that they've never been before, or perspective they've never perhaps experienced, is a sign of a really good author. So those are my perspectives on both the book and the ending.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great to have you back, and jump back in when there's something in the chat worth discussing, or if you have another question or comment. We have a lot of great hands now. I see Angela. Angela, talk to us.
Yeah. I overall have really enjoyed the book. I got a really late start. I started reading it at 10 o'clock on Monday, so I haven't finished it. I haven't seen the end yet. But compared to last book, where I was like talking about all the sex and all the sadness, and you're like, don't worry, this one's a really sweet story, and it is. And it's been super easy to get through. And in a time right now over the last year where we've dealt with a lot of battles, and I think maybe Donna mentioned it, or maybe Rebecca, it's not about the whiteness. It's not about anything else. It's not about a battle for culture. It's really just understanding how some people live their normal lives a different way without necessarily combativeness and things like that. I also thought it was interesting. The new girl in school just seemed to have it real easy right away, based on all the movies you usually watch. And they're usually outcast, especially if they have a really weird accent or anything like that. But we also don't see the full engulfment, but it's cool to see that she felt very welcome, and the relationship in general, and how two completely different sides can have so much common ground and appreciation for each other. So far I'm really, really enjoying it, and I will probably finish it tonight or tomorrow. So, but yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Angela. Rachel Geiser, talk to us.
Yeah, hi guys.
Hi.
I did just finish it tonight, actually, which is the closest I've ever cut it for
Awesome.
one of these, because I'm obsessive compulsive with getting it done in time. But mostly because, I mean, 2020 was shitty. 2021 didn't start out great, and like I just got a couple chapters in, and she talked about like not being as strong and like her stomach hurt. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna swear that. Okay, I swore in my head, and I was like, I do not want to read this right now. I am not in the headspace for this, and I put it off and put it off because I just didn't want to deal with that. Because I'm like, oh, she's sick. She's going to either die or have some harrowing illness that she has to get through, and I just didn't want to deal with it. So I just finished it, and it's good. Angela, I just finished it. It was great. I didn't mind the ending so much, if we were talking about the ending, because I I just felt like I didn't feel like that they like went flying off the coaster. I didn't feel like they died on the coaster. They talked about just a few paragraphs before that about this is the perfect moment, they said to each other. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of what it is that they each had this perfect moment and this was the height. And now after this, after they leave, this is the end, probably for both of them. I mean, how long has he been on death row? I don't know what the average is for people. I know it depends on the state, probably in court cases and things like that. But this was the height. This was where they wanted to end it in feeling wise. And so like after this, they were gone. She probably went home and said goodbye. He probably went back to prison and wants to focus on that day. And that was the highlight for him at the end here. So I kind of see it as that was, sorry, Catherine, that's really funny. Okay.
It is funny. I know. We got to address that. Yeah.
So not the Grease ending, but I did feel like
we go together. Like
I'm not going to break into song.
Okay, so Rachel, I don't want to cut you off. I want you to finish, but I want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying in your envisioning of this ending. Then physically, they're still there at the end of the ride, and they're not actually dead. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like sort of their minds or their souls transcended to a higher plane, and that was like the best it's ever gonna, like this is the high point, and it's all downhill from here, sort of thing. Okay, so in that one, yeah. Now I wonder, are there others that is the coaster empty when they come back, or are their bodies are they both actually just dead in the car, and they're just their souls or spirits went up or something? Any other thoughts on that? Am I pushing this too much? Just because of the fact that it was brought up that a lot of people maybe don't like the ending, and I'm wondering, how do you interpret the ending? Because I don't know that we all read the same ending. That's what's interesting to me. And I think what I'm hearing is maybe Rachel Geiser and I are sort of talking about the same ending. I think that's what she's, if I'm not misrepresenting your thoughts here. Yeah. Did you have anything else, Rachel?
No, I really enjoyed it. And I'm sorry I didn't start it sooner. It wasn't as bleak as I thought it was going to be, but I wasn't ready for a very sick child. So.
Rachel, I understand, but we've been doing this for how many years now together? You got to trust me. You got to trust me. And you got to know that
I've been a little difficult.
Yeah, but your OCD wants you to finish it before 7 p.m. And the Zoom starts. So you got to do it. You know what? This is sooner the better. Just go for it. That's why I give you plenty of months in advance. All right, Ruthie, are you still with us? Ruthie, talk to us.
Hi, I'm a Leo also.
Excellent.
Hello. I think that I read the ending more literally as well, and I didn't love it. It didn't really bother me, but it wasn't my favorite. I think I like looking at it more, some of the magical realism ways that you guys are talking about. It kind of like clicks in my head a little bit better when I think about it that way. But the main thing I wanted to say was, I don't know if anyone else listened to the audiobook, but I think one of the reasons I really liked it was because I felt the voice actors did an amazing job with one, getting the Trini accent down. Was like, they kept talking about how her accent was so beautiful, and it really was like in the audiobook, and I was just like wanted to keep listening to her telling her story. And all of the characters really had great voice actors, I thought, and I really enjoyed the listening aspect of this book in particular. So if anyone wants to read it again, I would definitely recommend the audiobook.
Ruthie, I agree with you completely. I got the audio through the Libby app. So I got it, from the library with the Libby app, which is a great app. If you don't have it, check it out. You can get audiobooks through your library. And anytime, if I had just read it, I was going back and forth between paper and audio version. I would have tried to do that in my head, and it wouldn't have sounded right. And then I would have been frustrated, and I wouldn't be able to pronounce certain things. And so I love it. I love it when it is a good reader who does accent work and it just feels like you're really, and with the 4 different, main sort of characters here and their POVs, it was really interesting to hear. So yeah, highly recommend anyone checking it out.
This is Rebecca again. I'm interjecting. How do you pronounce lime or liming, or I could never figure that out. How is that in the audiobook? Lime. Like when they would hang with each other, they would say, that was the term they used. Does anyone know?
Ruthie, do you remember? It's been a while now for me.
I don't remember that one specifically. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyone else, if they have it, feel free to raise their hand and please give us your pronunciation of it. Ruthie, thank you. Did you have anything else? Excellent. Thanks for being here. Katie Kiesau.
Hi, everyone. I'm a Pisces, so I felt all the feels in this book.
Your birthday's coming up then.
Yeah, on the 24th. So
excellent.
Soon. So I enjoyed this book overall. I really liked the storylines between all of the high school classmates and the friendships and the family. Like, it was, all those dynamics were spot on, like perfect, between the little brother and how the sister like interacted, the mom and the dad, and just the different personalities with the friends. Like, that was all great. I didn't mind the sickness aspect of it, just because I felt like there had to be some kind of bad news bears moment. I did not like the dream sequences with Queenie, just because I felt like she was a part of the story, but not the main part of the story. And there was too much long focus on that when Mabel didn't even know her. Like, if it was a dream sequence that Aubrey would have been having with her to try to find some connection for medicine to help Mabel, that would have made more sense to me. But having Mabel have the long dream sequences when she didn't even know the woman, and it was these big long storylines about her life, didn't make any sense to me. And to kind of round it out, I hated the ending. It was awful to me. I wanted to like chuck my Kindle across the room. Like, they already had their perfect moment, their perfect day. They could have just rounded it out with them getting on the roller coaster and having fun. But no, they made it this bullshit moment, and it's not magical realism, because the car came back empty and it said all that came back was the pair of handcuffs on the bar. So
okay,
no,
you're
they
right.
could have just ended it with a beautiful day at the amusement park at Coney Island and called it good. I hated the ending.
Katie, thank you. You actually, you bring up a key point there. That's hard to if it did state that. It said the car came back with just the handcuffs in it. Okay, so now that leads me to, I see Catherine's comment in the chat. It's getting a lot of laughs too. I gotta ask, Katie and Catherine Young, both of you. We got a couple of Kates here, maybe 2 Catherines, who knows? How do you interpret the end of Grease? Do they actually fly away in a car at the end of Grease? And are they being waved to? And is it like, that just happened? Danny Zuko just flew away with Sandy.
I'm not saying I like the ending of Grease either. That was also obnoxious. I mean, seriously, what high school has a big freaking carnival, let alone a shop class that can turn a beat up car into grease lightning? Like, the problem I have with this book ending that way is like, yeah, there was a spirituality aspect from Afua in prison and him talking about the other inmate that disappeared. He could have been fantasizing, romanticizing it, because this other guy was also on death row. Maybe his stuff got left behind when it was his turn to go wherever they take people on death row, depending on the state. Grease was 100% like all fake. This book was set up in a realistic manner up into that moment, and I hated it.
Okay. Excellent points. Thank you. Fair enough. Will Sullivan, may I unmute you? Talk to us, Will Sullivan. Are you still with us, Will?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Hello. I am Will. I am a Scorpio. I wanted to circle back to a comment Angela made a while ago. I also really appreciated how the author brought me into a different perspective or just experience of the way of life in America or Trinidad, but it didn't seem like pushy or forced. Like, I think some of the most beautiful commentary on racism in this country, is thrown away in just like little stories. Like, I think of that scene where we have a flashback about Maybelle's father getting stopped at the cops and being afraid to calm her while he's teething because he didn't want to die. It's just like, it feels so natural the way some of these moments just like filter in everyday life. And I think it's such a more powerful way for someone who hasn't had that life experience to just get brought into that world and, just to get the sense that you're only seeing like a tip of an iceberg and there's like a lot more unseen under the surface there. So I really appreciated that. I wanted to circle also back to Jeff's comment about, feeling all the feels. I was surprised that like, I think the most emotional parts of this book for me were not directly tied to the terminal illness plot line, but just how many powerful conversations there were with like parents and like parental figures. I think that scene right at the end where Maybelle is lying in the dirt in Black Eden and, her dad, telling her dad to remember her there in that moment. I think that's really, really powerful. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, as far as the ending goes, maybe it's just because I come from a theater background. I know this author comes from the theater background in this community. I love avant-garde cinema. The ending was not a leap for me. It was perfect. In the film of my mind in reading this book, like I would actually like end the frame right as that train is like pulling in and just cut straight to those butterflies and like roll credits. Like I wouldn't even allow there to be like a logistical question of like, is it really them? Is it not them? Like I love the openness for broad interpretation.
Excellent. Thanks, Will. I like your imagery there. So, and I like that you attribute me to feeling all the feels. I'll be the first to cry in this group, and maybe before the night is over, you guys are going to make me cry. So, all right, Evelyn's hand is back up. Evelyn, talk to us.
Hi, I just Will sort of took some of my thunder. I just wanted to talk about just how normal the life was, and just how for these individuals, this family, this main family, Mabel's family, and how naturally like aspects of life that are difficult for them because they're Black just sort of filtered in. For example, the experience the dad had with the cop. I also really appreciate what a wide variety of Blackness was showcased. Like the dad was like less woke than the mom, and the mom was this sort of like yogi. And so I really enjoyed just the many characters. One of my favorite scenes in the book was the oh gosh, now I'm not gonna forget her name. She was the one who was dating Ursa. And their conversation in the car where Mabel Audra. Jazzy, that's right. I loved her. She was great. Yes, so like that conversation they had in the car, I just loved that, how they both gave each other time to like really explain sort of where they're coming from, and they had a really special bonding moment, which in some ways I thought was, I thought that was one of the better bonding moments in the book, to me. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was, nobody's talking about Whitney. I think that's part of the reason Queenie's background story was there. Like Whitney Houston comes in with Robin in one of the parties that she goes to in New York, and I thought that whole thing did not know anything about any of that. And I was telling my roommates about it, and I was like, like Whitney's like, there's a story and I don't know if this is real or not. And so she's like Googling it on her phone, and apparently there is some like truth to this, I guess. I guess Robin like wrote a book later on or something. But yeah, like all of that was really cool. And that made me feel really good that at least Whitney Houston had a really good friend, / more than a friend, with her like really sad marriage and all of that going on. But yeah, I loved that like somebody who's like a Gen Zer was so into Whitney Houston, had like a poster of her, and was like, and even before she knew that she was like gay, like for sure, she like still worshiped Whitney, and like I all of that was, I loved that part.
It's fantastic. If you want to know more, there was a fairly recent documentary about Whitney Houston that was pretty good. That might be worth checking out. And I don't know if you saw with the Super Bowl this weekend, but they replayed because her rendition of the national anthem was done in Tampa 30 years ago, and it's still to this day considered like the quintessential, maybe the best performance ever in like a big public setting of the national anthem. It's so good. So anyway, yeah, she checked that out. And she said she was inspired by Marvin Gaye's version of it, which he did at an NBA game. So I see Tony's hand is up. Tony, welcome back. Talk to us. Are you still with us, Tony?
I know I'm still here. Hi, Jeff. Tony, I'm a Leo.
All these Leos tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is it that there's so many Leos, or is it just that Leos talk? That's so. I thought the gentleman who went just a second ago really wrapped it up so nicely, where the ending leaves really open to interpretation. I also like to say that she just Stephen King'd it. She's like, and they apparated, and we're done. And like that was it. It didn't ruin the book for me at all. It just was. I was like, oh, I guess that's how we'll wrap it up. It did make me think: is cancer and YA books, is that like a thing? Is this a genre within YA books? I don't know, because and it was. I don't know the genre very well. Sometimes I think I may have read a YA book on accident and told you it wasn't a YA book, Jeff, because I thought it was sexier than a YA book would be, and then I read this one and I was like, oh, that was hot-ish, yeah, maybe that's part of the charm, I guess. I don't know. But I loved the characters. It was just delightful. And Queenie was, like, I thought that was really interesting how they tied that in with her medicine and the dreams. And I guess for me, I was already kind of seeing this wasn't totally, I didn't know anything about it. I just didn't know it was going to be magical realism, and so once they started going there, the ending just kind of made sense for me.
Well, okay. I'm glad that you just went with it and also could see, the beauty in it. So yeah, I'll keep tricking you into reading YA stuff if that's what it takes to get you. I mean, I know the comic books that we read, some people consider that YA. So I'm just saying, it's all right. We tend to do like one a year, I think, at Books and Bars, maybe like one official YA sort of designation. But I don't know if cancer is a thing because I don't read much more YA than outside of maybe the one that we do for Books and Bars. But if anyone else is more of a YA reader and can speak to how this book relates to other YA books, and let us know. I see Katie in the chat says, cancer in YA books is a way to prolong the tragedy over something like a car accident or something abrupt. Yeah. But I don't know if that's what the kids are afraid of these days. Is it cancer? Is that the number one fear? I don't know. Kara's hand is up. Kara, talk to us.
I have a different comment, but maybe cancer is like a metaphor for the slow death of climate change, and that's what the youth are really afraid of. It's not like a car accident, like a quick disaster, like the nuclear bomb. It is just a slow, awful, depressing death. I think that's maybe what it is.
Cool.
I also only know of one other YA book with cancer as a theme, so I wasn't aware that it was like a trend. I'm now wondering, I'm the first person who said it, and now I'm wondering if it's the wrong term, magical realism, because people are saying, I wanted to respond to the comments, how like it's a very grounded, realistic book up until the end. And I would absolutely disagree with that personally. Like, I think the magical elements, and maybe more fairly, they should be called spiritual elements, because they reflect a lot of people's real beliefs. So it's not a magical realism book, it's a spiritual book. And like, I didn't have a problem with the dreams. Like, if you do believe they're just dreams, then yeah, maybe you don't believe them. But if you believe that you have a connection to like your ancestors, then they're real. And like their belief in astrology and like the stars and stuff, like that was real to them. Like Audra didn't just believe that her grandma was like a homeopathic healer, right? She believed Queenie was magic and Audra could do magic. So I think like these weren't like characters who were grounded in kind of this like Western scientific realism. Like a lot of these characters genuinely believed in magic. And so to me, that's why like the ending felt very appropriate, because it did kind of also come out of like the beliefs of all of the characters that we've been reading. Like personally, like, you know, I'm a pretty secular, like non-magical person, but like I can suspend my disbelief and get into like the minds of these characters. So yeah, maybe it's not magical realism. Maybe it's just stemming from kind of this larger, just like different beliefs and things. And that's why I didn't have a problem with like the dreams. Like, yeah, she never knew or met Queenie, but like they do believe that like, you know, there's like this connection that they have with each other, and it's very real to them. So that's kind of how I interpreted it and I took it, you know. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't out of like left field, any of the things that happened.
Yeah, and I guess, and also for me, I would agree that it wasn't so jarring to me that that's how it ended. Like, I feel like she did a good job, Petrus did a good job of setting it up enough so that it didn't, to me, feel completely out of left field and jarring and as though the book had completely shifted tones. It was like, I feel like if you go back and look, because of, you know, these other things that are set up, it's like, okay, you know, this is, and now here we go. So I guess I was okay with it, and I'm okay with it being, you know, even if it's not the way that I originally said when I was talking with Rachel earlier about this, that I said maybe it's more of a metaphorical thing, or, you know, just a metaphysical thing, but they were still there.
Can I say one more? I do think
Absolutely.
it's a credit. I do think it's a credit to the author, like how real and grounded the characters are, that it does feel like only the very ending is like the only unrealistic thing that happens. But like, because of how like real Audra and Mabel and like their families feel, like, you know, it doesn't feel like the whole book, like, you know, so unrealistic, even though like, I don't know, to me, like dreaming, like real dreams and like astrology is not real for me personally. So I don't know. I think she writes such real grounded characters. Like they felt like real people. So maybe that's why the ending feels like it's kind of surprising to some people.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from a Scorpio again. Will Sullivan, talk to us. Are you still with us, Will?
I guess, yes, I am here. Can we?
Hello.
Yes. Hello. The only thing I didn't like about the Dreamo sequences was not that I like couldn't believe it or buy the realism of it. I just felt like it cheapened the specialness of the relationship between Afue, if I'm saying that name right, and Mabel. Like, it was so cool for her to like pick up this book and form this spiritual relationship and then like real life relationship with this, you know, death row inmate, and to have it, you know, to have her jump then to Queenie and have another experience with that. I felt like it cheapened the spiritual relationship she had with it. And I just, with how many other timeline jumping and like other family history is coming in a different way, I feel like there was a way to get those Queenie flashbacks into the text through a different means that didn't feel like so gimmicky.
Okay. Fair enough. Rachel Geiser. Hey.
Yeah, I think Kara, I think that the spiritual description I think is an accurate one. I hadn't thought about it the way. I was mostly going for, there's so much poetry in this book. Like half this book is poetry. So dreamy imagery and just speaking with the concise, very meaningful words that poetry uses, where every word is important because it's short and compact. That, I don't know, this ending seemed appropriate. I would have found it weird if it didn't kind of like, the ending didn't kind of fly off into the clouds. I just felt like, I mean, maybe I have a weird view of what poetry is, but I just thought that like that was appropriate because I don't know. I mean, of course, you want the concrete ending of like her surrounded by her family and kind of fading away, but I don't know, I kind of felt like that was what was next, and she didn't want to have to show that. We just assumed that was going to happen next. But I've completely forgotten what I actually raised my hand for, I think. Shoot, it probably wasn't that important, but yeah, I don't know, the poetry of it, I thought, because I don't think it came out of nowhere to me. It felt like there was always so much going on. Oh yeah, the thing I was gonna say, sorry. Maybe it's because I run away from books where people are dying all the time, clearly, but it was so visceral, the diagnosis to me, like, and the fear that it never felt so, like, I don't think I've read anything where the diagnosis and grappling with the idea of being diagnosed with this potentially and then inevitably terminal disease, like I had like a slight like panic attack inside me, and like, oh my God, this is the coming to terms with that idea. Like there's been a lot of death going on, family and friends lately, but it really just kind of hit me about that diagnosis being given to me and how would I react to that? And this book just did it for me, where I was just like, I really felt that from the character. And maybe who knew I was gonna identify with this teenager, but there was something about it that maybe it goes along with how real she wrote her characters too, that I just really felt it with her, about the helplessness of it and what do you do with that, and the parents and the friends, and just I don't know, it hit me more real than I think a lot of books where I can just kind of skim over it, or just it's a plot point kind of thing in other books. This one hit me a little deeper.
Yeah, and as a parent of a teen, like I was hit on that level also. And the thing about it is there was like immediately like no hope, like this is going to happen. It all went very quickly from this point. There wasn't like this prolonged, we're going to fight this, we're going to make this work. It was like it was inevitable. It seemed, it was like your time is so limited and you're just going to make the most of it, sort of thing. But yeah, thanks for sharing again, Rachel. Anyone else? Raise your hand. Anything that we haven't brought up yet, feel free to bring up. I see Linda has her hand up. Linda, I'm unmuting you. Please talk to us, or unmute yourself if you can. Hi, Linda.
Hi. Well, I'm an astrologer. So I'm a Scorpio astrologer. And somewhere I think I even have Junauda's chart, because she was a friend of my daughter. So that's partly why I read the whole thing.
Cool.
And I'm a grandma, or I'm of the grandma age. So I don't know if any of you have read her or heard her poem, Let's Give the Police to the Grandmas.
I haven't, no.
If you haven't, get it.
Check it out.
It's
okay.
like, and it's sort of the prototype for Queenie.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed the astrology of it, and I think partly the ending. I think the word "rushed" as an ending made some sense to me. The ending itself was fine, but when you figure out how deep she went with all the other characters in the whole process, it was sort of like they went off into a roller coaster and then boom, they're gone. I mean, it's like, I think that was more the problem of it than, but I was just, if this is a YA book, I was completely shocked about where this book was in comparison to what YA books were when I was a librarian in my kids' library. I mean, at that time, if they even, the ending would be, and they kissed, and that would be it. I mean, it was like, I'm not sure that this book would even get through, the PTA, were they gonna let it in or whatever? I thought it was amazing in terms of the depth. Now, as an astrologer, I can say that the kids who went through as the Pluto and Scorpio generation, they had a lot of cancer. They, as a generation, experienced lots of death. I went to my first funeral when my mother's funeral was the first funeral I ever went to. My daughter went to about 15 of them during her high school years. So, and cancer was a pretty big deal for lots of them. But so I enjoyed it, and I was really proud of her as a local author that she did it. And most of I've got to do more research on the astrologers that advised her, because some of her astrology was very interesting. I'm also toying with the idea of there's something I'm wondering about the ending in terms of if the expectation we have is a very white Cinderella-y, everybody lives happily ever after kind of expectation, whereas the capacity to actually magically get yourself out of here might culturally be a more more fitting thing for the culture that this book was in. And thanks for the recommendation of listening to the audiobook, because I kept trying to figure out what it would sound like in my head, and I was frustrated that I didn't know and didn't have a dictionary, and I like that. But anyway.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Linda. I have a couple questions that I want to run by you real quick. You, as a self-described grandma or grandma age, what would you do if they gave the police to you? Not having read the poem, I don't know. Is that something where you want to comment? If not, what does it mean when someone says they're Aquarius? Just tell me, because I need help. What's the first thing you think of?
Well, the first thing I think of is we are in an Aquarian time. We're all going to learn more about Aquarius. It's going to be the dominant energy for the next several hundred years, actually.
Wait a minute. So Aquarius is going to be dominant for the next several hundred years?
Well, we're not in the age of Aquarius yet, but that's what we're aiming at. And we've had a major transition in which we've been living the past 200 years in an Earth-based pyramidal style system, which is more Capricorn-y. And we've just moved into an emphasis on Aquarian energy, which is more circular, group orientation, and much more air, cerebral versus hopefully it's so Aquarius is rules group relationships, has somewhat of a idealistic orientation on people and individuality in people, but really finds real people kind of messy. It's the idea of people that's more. So
I love you guys on your little video squares. That's the perfect amount for me right now. Is that what we're hearing? Well, Linda, thank you so much. You're giving me some stuff to think about. I guess I was led to believe that the dawning of the age of Aquarius was sometime in the late 60s based on the song. But it sounds like it's a great time for me to be alive.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a great time for me to be alive and have a birthday. And so I'm loving it. So thank you. Anyone else, please raise your hand. If anything else that we have
not.
not.
Answer that one you said about
yes.
And the police.
Please do.
Basically, her idea is that, I mean, Queenie is the kind of grandma she's talking about. And the poem talks about that if we gave the police to the grandmas, they would just feed you up with mangoes and wonderful things and they knew how to love you up and understood whatever you were and talked to you about the stars and magic and things like that, rather than putting you in jail and killing you and things like that. But no, so everybody needs a good grandma to straighten them out. That's all.
They do. I will look forward to finding and reading her poem. So thank you for.
She has a YouTube where she does it herself. It's wonderful. I probably have the link if you want me. I'll put it in the chat.
if you could put it in the chat, that'd be great. And I will share it on our Books and Bars channels also. So thank you for that. It looks like Kara saying Tony shared it already in the chat. So there it is. Excellent. It's on Vimeo. Thank you, Tony. I will repost that here and then put it on some other places. Oops.
Jeff, this is Rebecca again.
Yes, Rebecca.
I have two comments. One, I had a brother who was diagnosed with leukemia, and from the time he was diagnosed to the time he died was about 8 months. And the 2 days is the 3rd anniversary. And so that hit very hard. It happens though quite more frequently than we would think. So it's not an unusual, well, it's rare, but it's not unusual. And so as she was going through that, there's a way, that's a way for, I think, people who've gone through this it really connected me because it affects everybody, of course, and people have to choose what to do when they know how to die. My second point is that I think the dreams were a way for Queenie to teach Mabel how to be ready for death and how to transition. And I think there was a point where Mabel said that she thought she was going to mention it, but then she didn't. And I thought at the time that was a dropped plot point, that it would have brought them together and all that. And then I think since the author didn't mention anymore, she just continued having the dreams. We were given access to the dreams so we could see what was happening to Mabel, which was no longer focusing on herself and what was going to happen with her. And it allowed her to make that inspiring decision to use the Make-A-Wish Foundation for this, to take her power and use it for good. And I thought that was an incredible thing that the author chose to do. So the dreams did not bother me because one, it gave me more access to Queenie. Two, it brought in, maybe that little string about Whitney, but I think it was really to teach Mabel spirituality that she didn't have otherwise. So those are my thoughts.
Interesting. I like that. I like that point of how it taught her that. That's a good idea. I'm wondering if, so what do we think Petrus was trying to say here? What's your takeaway? Maybe you're not used to reading YA, maybe this surprised you. What did you get from it? What do you think? What was the point? Anyone? Any thoughts on that? If not that, anything else that, you read the book and you wanted to talk about something tonight, what's the thing that we haven't touched on yet? We can bring it up to the group and stir up some more debate. Anyone have anything? while we wait, I want to remind you that we are back on the 24th. We're reading Anxious People by Frederick Bachmann. Bachmann is the author of A Man Called Uva, which we read for Books and Bars, also Bear Town, which we've read for Books and Bars. So he is getting in the rare air of an author that we will have now read 3 times for the book club. I have never been let down by one of his books yet, so I hope that you enjoy it also. And it is not dark, it is not depressing. So I hope that it flows nicely from this one and that you enjoy it. So that is Anxious People. And then we're back March 10th with The Chain by Adrian McGinty, which we will have a lot of really interesting things to say about. I won't comment on what that will make you feel. I will say, though, that I laughed a lot at The Chain, and maybe I wasn't supposed to, but I found it to be very entertaining. Then we have The Cold Millions by Jess Walter. Jess Walter, we've actually, he'll be another one that we'll have read 3 times because we read Beautiful Ruins and one really old one that no one has been around for. I'd be really interested to see in our 17 years who here thinks that they have been with us the longest and wants to claim that title tonight, who's been like, I've been with Books and Bars for 14 years. If you think you can do it, raise your hand and tell us. Rebecca, let me start with you. How many years have you been with Books and Bars?
Since 2010, so 11 years.
11 years for Rebecca. All right. Catherine's hand is up. Catherine, may I unmute you?
Yeah, the book didn't do it for me. I didn't understand magical realism. I don't read fiction. I completely missed that. Like, it was so over my head. I just thought it was a story, and I'm a very woo-woo kind of witchy person. So I had no idea like the things that were happening or like not supposed to be. Anyways, I missed a lot, but I really think this would have been an important book for me if I was in my teens. And I just like, despite me now really not liking the book, like I was so upset. You should have seen the rant. I was talking to my coworker and like, it was like Grease, but not as satisfying as Grease. Like, you know, but I wish that I would have read a book like this when I was younger, and I wish I would have gotten a different experience around things. And I wish something would have talked me through hard subjects like that, because in my childhood I experienced hard subjects. I experienced death. I experienced parents throwing their kids out and the kids ending up in foster care. It's like we went through those traumas, but nobody talked to us about it. So I super appreciated this book, even though for me as an adult, I was not satisfied. And I think me not being satisfied was like just me missing the boat on what this type of fiction title was.
Catherine, I think you bring up a great point that, and it's been echoed a little bit here tonight, that maybe YA has really gotten better, and that there are better books out there now for teens than there were, when our parents or our grandparents were teens, and they maybe did not have the resources that teens now have, and that YA in general is just a much more important and mature format, and can be really, really useful. It's funny that you say that you're witchy and woo-woo, but that you didn't get this, because I don't, maybe I'm missing what you mean by witchy and woo-woo. And then that is, and also I never would have thought to compare this to Grease, and I love it now, and I can't get it out of my head because there's maybe other reasons why it's like Grease too, which I like. But can you explain what you mean by that you're witchy and woo-woo?
I don't think seeing somebody in your dreams is like a fantastical element to write into a book. Like I firmly believe that's something that's possible. I think maybe that's why like a lot of the elements now that I look back that everybody was talking about that were, like magic and mystical, like I literally describe my grandma as magic. Like that's a word I use to describe my grandmother. Okay. So it's just things like that I'm like, oh, that's seen as really abnormal. And I just didn't grasp that piece. I guess for me, when I think about like a story that's based in magic, I guess it has to go all the way to wizard school. I didn't get it, like that this was this middle ground. I didn't understand.
Okay. So like for you, magical realism is just realism.
Yeah, I guess because none of it seemed fantastical. Like I didn't think any of it was like I don't know. So I just kind of missed that.
Yeah, well, I mentioned in the chat, I mean, like I've had the thing where like, like a dead relative is in the dream. And I feel like that's interesting. Like, I mean, what's the point? There's something there, I think it's a message or something. I don't know. Like, it kind of depends on what was said or happened in the dream, but I don't know. Like because I don't frequently dream about like my past friends or relatives or whatever. But I think when you do it, maybe it's just your subconscious, but I don't know. I take it as something too. So I don't know if that makes you wish or woo woo, but I think I would still go with Hufflepuff. They're underrated. So there you go. Okay. I see Kara's hand is back up. Kara, talk to us.
Man, I just wanted to like respond to like the YA being like so much better. Like, there are so many good young adult novels that are just like exceptional. So I think like sometimes I enjoy reading like YA better than like just general fiction, because there are so many, like, I don't know, it just feels like YA sometimes has more like diversity and like compelling stories. Whereas like a lot of like the recommended books that I see are like kind of the same kind of grimdark white man, like, let's be sad. And that's not what I'm about. But one plug, I don't know if this came out a few years ago, so it's kind of old. It's not old news, but it's one of my favorite books. I would rate it a 5, just like I rated this a 5. But for those of you who didn't like the ending, this is a much more like grounded in reality book. And it's Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I've recommended it to like all of my friends, and I've bought it for so many people. I have listened to the audiobook, which I never do. I hate audiobooks, but it's actually a good audiobook. And I've read it like 3 times, and it makes me cry every time, but it's in a beautiful way. Like, it's not sad. It is so good. So I would recommend it to anyone who wants to get a taste of like more YA if they haven't.
Well, I see Beth Burns says it was the Read Brave title in 2017 when they were talking about identity. She loves the book. And Beth also mentioned that YA is the fastest growing segment in publishing right now. So yeah, we'll keep doing at least one a year. So I want to throw it out there. I see Pondi, I got you next, but anything else we haven't brought up yet, please bring it up if you want to talk about it. And anyone else have any sort of takeaway or what the author was trying to say?
Sorry, Jeff, I muted you. I guess I really want to. So you need to unmute yourself. Sorry. Talk about taking over. I wanted to say that in the chat, there's been some people talking about when they started going to Books and Bars. So pick up that thread. We have someone from 2008.
Yeah, that's Kirsten Bailey. I was excited to see her name in the list here. So I don't know if anyone's going to top 2008. That's pretty good. I would love it if anyone else. I would love if you know of people that used to come but don't come anymore. Bring them back. Tell them we're online now. They can join back. But Pondi, are you still with us?
Yes. Hello.
Yes.
This is my first Books and Bars. Thank you. I've always been meaning to show up, and I actually picked up this book before I saw that you were doing this. I'm a big young adult reader and big fan. I'm a Scorpio, so watch out. And I'm a teacher, so I have a question. For me, I couldn't get into it at first, and the audiobook did it 100% for me. So my takeaway was the voice. So like, I'm curious if you like did the audio, can you like raise your hand? Because I'm curious how many of you actually did the audiobook.
Yeah.
Cool. So not as many as I thought, because I'd be really interested, like at first, like, because the language is so different than what I hear every day. It was really challenging for me at the beginning to like get the flow of it and the energy of it. So I'd be really curious for those who didn't read the audiobook if you still enjoyed it as much as I did, because like I said, my takeaway was just the voice and the storytelling and the larger than life, and I can't wait to hear the author speak, and I'm eager to hear how she interprets the novels, and I secretly was hoping she was going to like stop in tonight, but I guess I have to come back for an event in a couple of months to hear her speak.
Yeah, there will be plenty of opportunities coming up with Read Brave, but I don't think they would have sprung that on me. They would have, and if they wanted to clear it with me, we would have worked something out and done it like we do, where I interview the author and you guys get to ask them questions and